Welcome, everybody. My name's Tony, for those who I haven't had a chance to meet yet. Thanks for giving up a bit of time on a Monday afternoon. It's hard to believe I'm saying this, but we're getting close to Christmas, so I'm sure everyone's very busy. It's not that far away, so we really do appreciate everybody giving up a couple of hours, or, well, it may not even be that long, but giving up some time on a Monday evening. For those who aren't aware, we are recording today's session. So if you're in the witness protection program, turn your camera off. If you're not, make sure you smile all the time and look beautiful. We will put this session available to our clubs as well for those who couldn't make.
Yeah, thank you. So hopefully everyone can see what I can see up on screen, the agenda for tonight. We are hopeful that we can share some information with you that will be of interest and of use. And of course, we'll take any questions and comments on those topics as we go. As Tony said, if there's anything we haven't covered off when we get to the end, by all means, put your hand up or make yourself heard, and we'll try to get to everybody's questions as we can. If we don't know the answer, we'll certainly endeavour to find out for you. Anyone who's interested in the presentation itself, the slides, we will be circulating, as we will be those people who might have attended any of the region forums that we've presented previously. Those will be circulated this week, come Wednesday and Thursday. By all means, if you're taking some notes but don't try to capture everything on the screen, we'll certainly be sharing this information with you. As Tony said, we'll be hearing from our President, Pat Schramm, shortly, our Education and Training Manager, Matt Tobre. I'll speak to a couple of topics, and then Mark Coleman, who won't be joined by his country manager, Northern colleague, Josh Thornton, who's just landed interstate to compete in the Australian Para Championships. Mark and I will cover off a couple of topics between us as well. And with any further ado, I'll hand over to Pat Schramm, our volunteer president, who will kick us off with an update on some governance matters. Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, Jeff. I get the boring stuff, so you've got to put up with me at the beginning, but it'll be okay. So in regard to governance, we don't actually make anything up. It's like a tiered system. The Australian Sports Commission is the peak body for sport in Australia, and about 2020 they worked on their sports governance principles, and then they produced the sports governance standards. Everything that we ask a club to do in regard to governance, we haven't made up. It's actually come down from above. Now, I just want to point out, and you'll get this in your slides, there is some really good online learning on the Australian Sports Commission site for directors and people to do in administration in clubs. And don't be scared off that it's online learning, because it's actually really user-friendly. I know some very elderly members that have done some of it and have really appreciated it. You think, oh yeah, I've been a director, I've been the secretary for 15 years or whatever, I know it all. But because things have changed and society has changed, doing this learning, sure, you'll be rewarded when you think, oh yeah, I already knew that, but there'll be some things that you didn't know, and that's really good to find and move on. So thanks, Jeff. So in Bowls in Australia, Bowls Australia is the recognised national sporting organisation, and Bowls Victoria is the recognised state sporting organisation. We have to, both NSOs and SSOs must be compliant with standards that are set by the Australian Sports Commission, and also in Victoria we have to meet the requirements of Sport and Rec Victoria. So as I said right at the beginning, we don't make anything up in regard to governance. It's coming from above. So this is direct off the Australian Sports Commission website. I'm actually not going to talk to the points. I'm just going to say the bowls clubs are really good at sausage sizzles, tournaments, raffles, all those things that are the actual doing part of a club. Governance is not that, where the bowls clubs are very good at that right-hand column. pardon me, we're not so good always at the left-hand column. And that's where we want to do some of our focus to make sure that our clubs are doing the things that get clubs ready for, pardon me, for seeing things through. Jeff, could you go to the next slide, please? So a quote, good governance does not guarantee success. However, poor governance almost certainly guarantees failure. And that's just true in anything. Next one. So as president of Bowls Victoria, we've got 499 clubs, and I want every one of those clubs to have made sure that their constitution has been reviewed in the past 5 years. If your club hasn't looked at its constitution in the past 5 years, could you please do so? Now, your regulations or bylaws are those things that can be changed by a committee or board. Would you go back through your minutes of your meetings for the last 12 months and find out whether there's anything in those minutes that you need to update in your regulations or bylaws? Sometimes we pass a motion and yes, this will happen or that'll happen, and we forget to update the regulations. So just if you do that once a year, it's nice and neat and tidy. The next thing I think is seriously important is a code of conduct that's not just a document. It's not just on the wall. It's not just in the book. It's actually lived by every single member of your club. Not most people, you can't say, oh, that's only so-and-so, he or she's always done that. That's not acceptable. The code of conduct is for everyone, and that's seriously important. Now, the next point that we really want clubs to have, and you'll get a lot of this tonight, I talk about a selection policy, Jeff talks about it, Matt talks about it. We want every club to have a selection policy that reflects the modern game of bowls. So that's how Matt will talk in great detail. But the thing about issues in clubs, every time, most times when there's an issue, it comes from selection. So we're really needing clubs to be prepared. If every one of our 499 clubs had a constitution that's been reviewed in the past 5 years, up-to-date regulations, a really practical code of conduct, and a good selection policy, I would be very, very happy. So all the other documents, yes, seriously important, but if you've got those 4 things in place, then you're going to set your club up. Good, as this quote said, good governance makes things much easier. So that's all I've got to say about governance. And now I actually get to do another bit about Bowls Australia update. So as I said before, Bowls Australia is the national sporting organisation. You would know that 3 years ago they ran at a $1.2 million loss. And thank heavens their financial position has really improved. Mind you, it's improved on the back of bowlers paying for things. Everybody that's in Devonport, it started today, the under-18s and then the over-60s, the paras, open sides. Everybody, all of those bowlers have had to pay a $350 levy. And if you go to the Australian Open, you'll also know that it used to be $55 2 years ago. Then it went to $70, and last year it went to $90. And Bowls Australia are really excited. $99. They're really excited that they're holding it at $99 for this year. So improved financial position, but we've paid for it. Their constitution has needed updating, and in fact there were some motions passed 2 weeks ago that actually made it compliant with the ASC. There's been a lot of collaboration between Bowls New South Wales, BQ and BV. We're the 3 biggest states. We've got 80% of the bowlers, and we were working really hard to make sure that Bowls Australia is doing things that are best for bowlers. Bowls Victoria does have a concern with the membership of the BA board. It's a board of 9, and of those 9, really only 1 person is what I call a real bowler. 3 others have taken up bowls, but 1 person went through club land, region land, state land to be a part of the BA board. It's a real concern when people who don't know or understand the culture of bowls are making decisions. And that's why we work really hard to keep them on track. Sometimes we're the naughty kids in the corner, but anyway. In regard to the Olympics and Paralympics, as you know, a host nation gets to bring in a number of sports. 35 sports have written submissions for Brisbane Olympics. That 35 sports will be cut to about 6 in December. So we'll know a bit more in December whether there's a chance for bowls to be in the Olympics and Paralympics. And I must say, Bowls Australia has been working well with World Bowls in regard to this push. So, it's really important that everybody is positive and doing good things to work towards something that's quite like that. Now, that's the end of me. Does anyone have any questions about either governance or the Bowls Australia update?
Survives that cough, she'll be with us to the end. So if anything does come up a little bit later.
I'm going to put it on mute.
Thanks, Pat. By all means, if you want to put a question into the chat or raise your hand, no problems at all. As we say, we'll take more questions at the end, so no problem. At this time, I'll invite Matt Atobre, our Education and Training Manager, to speak. Matt will cover off a couple of topics, but a couple in particular that have been a strong focus the last couple of months. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Jeff. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us online today. And it's been great to travel around and see all the regions in person. For those people who I haven't met, the names on the participation list do look very familiar. So I'm sure I've either spoken to you or met you in person, or we've had some emails back and forth. So my name's Matt Atobre, Education and Training Manager at BV. Just ticked over 5 years. Like Pat, I'm an ex-school teacher. So I've been trying to bring my skills that I've learned in the education department to the bowls world. I do wear quite a few hats at BV. The first one is coaching. Just a quick update in that area. Bowls Australia have been doing some great work in reviewing the current framework for coaching, and it was pretty clear right from the start that we give our coaches a good start, but we don't support them enough in their journey. So that review still got a little bit more work to go through. We're expecting some big announcements in the new year on how coaching courses are going to look and how our coaches get supported and how they reaccredit. So stay tuned for that. Officiating, once the coaching has been reviewed, officiating will also get reviewed as well by Bowls Australia. So there'll be some positive changes in that area. We've introduced quite a few new presenters and assessors, which has been great for some of our regional areas that were lacking in that area. So yeah, we're expecting those courses to be running really smoothly and some improvements to come to the officiating area. Another hat that I wear is BowlsLink, which I'll talk about very shortly. And the other one is education and training. So in September, we worked really hard to deliver 4 webinars. If you haven't seen them all, they're on our website under Club Assist, Club Education and Training. One of those big webinars was selection, which we hadn't done before, and this complements the Bowls Learn unit that you can do online. So if Jeff can just go to the next slide. And
Matty, we might just address, if it's okay, we'll address Rob Unsworth's question. He's just asking around providing coaching for coaches on coaching bowlers with bowling arms. So is there content in the new courses for the coaches?
There's definitely content in the current course. So that got revised a couple of years ago. So our new coaches are coming out with some experience with the bowling arm. We do have Coach Force where we can send some of our expert bowlers who use the arm to help our clubs. But I can guarantee it'll be in the new form of the coaching course as well.
Thanks, Matty.
So yeah, look, selection is the first time we've done any form of training with selection. We all realise how important it is in our clubs. So some of the key learnings to take out of that webinar. Firstly, as Pat mentioned, it's really important that our clubs have a selection policy. This outlines the who, when and what. So who's going to be our selectors, and that's a club decision on how they decide that. When are the selectors going to meet and release sides? And I think the really important one is what are our clubs trying to achieve for the upcoming pennant season? I don't think there's enough clubs that focus on what their goals are and clearly communicate that with their members. So there are 3 things that you need to have in a selection policy, as well as some season expectations. So what's your club's expectations with training? Are your members expected to train a certain amount of times during the week? And what do they do if they're unable to train? Unavailability, I think, is managed well by clubs. They all seem to have different systems on communicating that. But I think that another big point is how do we manage selection? So what happens if a player loses their position from one week to another? Do the sides just get released and that player finds out that they've been dropped? Or is there a process where the player is communicated with prior to the slides being released and explained why they've lost their spot and what they need to do to get back into the position that they want to play? Also, what's the process if a member wants to appeal a decision? That also needs to be clearly spelled out in a selection policy. So I know a lot of clubs are doing these good things, but they don't have a policy that clearly explains it to the members. So I can't stress how important it is to have that. Also, in the webinar, we talk about assessment. So if you are going to be making some big decisions on your members and their position, do you have assessment that backs that up? In the webinar, Troy and I have a healthy debate about objective and subjective. And obviously, we want clubs to be using more objective assessment, pulling some statistics from the match, as opposed to people's opinions. So, yeah, look, we've discussed this at quite a few road shows. I think the last one, we got a few more questions about what are objective assessment. Clearly, ends one when you've got a number or if you've dropped a number, but maybe we also need to look at some statistics in the match. So what's the front end doing when they cross over? What's the back end doing when they're crossing over? I know some clubs also rate each bowl, so that gives you a good idea of how that player has performed. It is a club decision, but we really stress you should be using more objective than subjective. Troy and I had a discussion about this webinar prior to it, and the big reason for doing it is to clearly spell out the COPs. Clubs and selection committees need to be really clear on these, and they also need to know how they can pull reports from BowlsLink's result portal. So in the webinar, we demonstrate how to do that, and also look at some of the COPs that you might have. Just remember that metro and regional can be different in their COPs. Finally, we look at some best practice. I think the real gem in that section is having a bit of a code of cooperation amongst your selection committee. The selection committee, it's a tough job, and you really need to be a team and work as a team. So I know a lot of committees in their first meeting, they probably would have sat down and said, right, what's our non-negotiables as a committee here? And you need to discuss those and then stick to them throughout the season. So if you haven't had a look at the webinar, please jump onto our website. We might have a look at that later on, Jeff, where people can access the information and look at the recordings. They are also on our BVTV YouTube channel. So that's a little bit of training. Now we'll look at BowlsLink. So in this section here, we're going to look at what clubs need to be doing now with BowlsLink, and then where is BowlsLink heading as a system. So I've got a bit of a table here. So now, obviously, BowlsLink manages your database, and I think a lot more clubs now are using BowlsLink as their main source of database instead of juggling different systems. The big message here is that you need to be clear on your participation types and how to identify your members in your database. So a big change came in prior to last season, where previously we would just say yes or no to playing rights, and then we would make them financial. We've now got capabilities in the system to apply a membership type annually. So they need to be updated annually. They expire, but they have a few things in there. So the big one is a participation type. And clubs need to clearly identify how their members are participating. So if you have a look at the bottom, I think we all are used to the green dot. That's a competition bowler. They're playing pennant region events as well. We have a lot of bowlers who pennant's not what they want to play. They want to play weekly tournaments or competitions. So we call them social club bowlers. If you identify your members with those two, you are going to get charged affiliation fee. Sorry, I've got a little 2-year-old in the background. And that needs to be done before Christmas. The top 3, these are the members that we're trying to encourage more and more into our club. And this is probably where you're going to get the growth of your membership. So program bowlers, they're people that are doing a 4 or 5 week program. Jack Attack's really popular, corporate bowls. We've got a lot more night competitions going on now. So they're identified as a program bowler and you won't be charged affiliation. Not a lot of clubs are putting their barefooters in yet, but you can, and you give them an experience participation type. Again, no charge for affiliation. And non-player, we all know these, they're probably listed as a social. Again, you won't get charged affiliation. So just a bit of a reminder, prior to Christmas, identify each of your bowlers. And look, if you can't identify someone, maybe it's time to archive them in your database.
Maddie, just a question coming through from Tommy and Kate St Kilda. Nice to see you both again too. Thank you for joining us. Will BowlsLink capture games played for players? They currently have a spreadsheet that has 160 years of data on their players and milestones. I think it's probably a bit of a yes and no answer, but what's BowlsLink's ability to capture games?
Future section. There's definitely talk about statistics and bringing that into BowlsLink to count the number of games. So the more competitions we have in BowlsLink, the more opportunity we've got to record this data. So we don't have it yet, but I know there's talk of that coming in the future.
So the ability will be in future if competitions are you use BowlsLink to administer your competitions and players are entering through that will have the ability to record. At the moment, individual records also have a notes field, so there would be an ability to capture milestones and some of the history against the existing records. Would that be useful?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. And the
Yeah.
result portal will give you ladders from each of the years on how many games they've played. But I've got to agree that that's a feature that we need to get into this system.
Thanks, Matty.
Another area of BowlsLink, I think it handles transfers really well. But just a bit of a warning here that the primary club needs to approve these. I think clubs still get it confused with an invitation and approval. Like an invitation is what goes out initially, and generally the member will accept that. But in a transfer, the primary club still needs to approve. So just check your transfer area if you're waiting on a transfer, and if you know that someone's leaving, again, check your transfer area and see whether you need to approve that or not. Another warning in this area, though, too, if you do archive a member, primary club will not have a chance to approve it. So primary clubs, just be careful if you're archiving, which you probably need to do just before Christmas. You may not get notice of a transfer, so clubs can still transfer them. Reports. The reports are improving more and more in the system, and there's a lot more available than when we first started. The big one here is I would be making sure that all our members have an up-to-date email and mobile in their key details. As you'll see in the future list there, the BowlsLink app, which has been fantastic, got released on the 1st of October. We're still getting a lot of questions and members contacting us, which is fine, but they're just not being able to log in because they don't have a valid email in their profile. So club admins highly recommend pulling that report and just checking that your members' details are up to date. The last three things that I think clubs still need to think a little bit more about. So the next slide will show an example of how you can run your club champs in BowlsLink. It does it really well. It also does tournaments really well. So registration, you can do payment, and obviously the fixturing and results side is the strength of BowlsLink. I'm going to work closely in the new year with BA and work on some training that we can provide for our clubs. So if you are thinking about moving to BowlsLink for your comps, which I strongly recommend, look out for some training in the new year on how to use the system. There is a unit in BowlsLearn, but I think we probably need to step up that education a little bit and help our clubs, because the process is a little bit complicated. The next one is email campaigns. Clubs do this really well. Newsletters, you see them all the time in the club rooms, but clubs using the email campaigns to send them out. The great feature in here is you get to see how many people have opened that email, and it's also a great way of delivering it to them via their email. So if you're not using email campaigns and you've got a great newsletter, maybe just think about going to that next step. And the last one is live scoring, which I believe Victoria is leading the way with. And as you can see, this year we've pushed the boundaries even more. We've gone to Divi 2 in Metro for weekend and Divi 1 in midweek in Metro. And we've also got a lot of our regional areas having a go in their top level. I've got a bit of a table here because obviously live scoring always involves a bit of discussion. So here are some positives of live scoring, real-time scores. I know at the Nationals we'd love to have a look at how our players are performing and what the real-time score is. So, and I know a lot of people do this for pennant. State champs, it's fantastic. The Vic Open over 60s. So that's a huge positive. We do actually deal with quite a few result disputes. We've had a few over the weekend. When we live score, we don't get these errors. The shuffle button will match up who you're playing against, and then the rinks know who they're playing, and off they go and put the scores into the system. It does reduce the demand on our volunteers. Jeff will talk a little bit later on about how our volunteers have a huge demand at these big tournaments. Not giving out cards and having them come back in. Players are doing all the scores. It just reduces the demand. This was probably already just said before, game analysis. So the more we live score, the more data we can get in the system and provide it for our clubs. Probably not a lot of people know that some of those live scores come straight into our live stream. We always get questions as commentators, what's happening in other rinks. So the ability to display that's fantastic. And I suppose the last positive is that we are leading the way, and we're just building the capacity in our state. So when our players do travel and are asked to live score, they're not fazed by it. They've embraced it and are quite capable. Obviously, there's always some negatives when you bring in something new, and we realise these. So there can be technology issues, phones not working, the app maybe underperforming at times. I have used it in my games this year, and it's been performing really well. So we've got to just be aware of those and report them. And then the last two, I think, are really a mindset. And some people do have a little bit of a negative mindset towards live scoring. So they are more than capable of doing it. From the training that I've done, generally the response straight after is, "Oh, it's not that hard, is it?" It's just they haven't had a go of it. And I think the more we embrace it and have a go, which is what we're encouraging all our regions to do, the player attitude towards live scoring will become a lot more positive.
Matty, a couple of questions come through on live scoring, not surprisingly. I think we've got good news. Yeah, we've got good news for Tommy and Kate at St Kilda. Could the live scoring be updated to see the overall live score?
That's a really good question. We probably need to promote this a little bit more on our socials, but the new BowlsLink app obviously has that result portal that we're very used to. If you go in there and you go into a competition like Premier Reserve, Div 1 or Div 2, there is a live button in there that will show you the live scores as they're happening. So because our rinks are live scoring, it'll give you an overall board in there. Might have a chat to Ronnie about promoting this a little bit more. So I know some players who are doing overall scoreboards have been going into that app just to get the overall to do it at their club. So we're sort of hoping that the scoring app will change a little bit next year. We're cautious about making changes now that we're into the season. So ideas of having that in the scoring app have definitely been floated.
And a second one from Jennifer Holmes. The shuffle button isn't changing the home teams and their rinks. They can train on the rink and play on it every home game.
Well, that's not quite true, Jeff. I did a lot of testing of this because we have had comments over the years about the shuffle button. And I've been placed in as team 4 for all of my games, and I've only played there once as team 4. I played as team 1 last week and team 2 the other week. So there's going to be times in there where you might not move where you're from you started, and that can happen in a normal card shuffle. But we've got enough evidence to show that it is moving the players, and we can always show you that data.
Follow up from Steve Weston in Metro West. Thanks, Steve. What happens when your opposition refuses to use live scoring?
Yeah, well, this is that the attitude, isn't it? From some clubs. Look, it's
Matt,
really frustrating.
You're not coming through, Matt. I'm afraid your audio's dropped out.
Has it?
No, it's fine for me, Jeff.
You might have to give us a check one
Keep
too.
going, Matty.
Keep going?
Yeah, you got another thumbs up. Keep going, Matty. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, look, it's disappointing to hear that, and please communicate that with us if there are clubs that are refusing to do this. And look, you're going to have to go to a card and then maybe let us know, and then we can work with that club that's refused to do it. We had a little bit of this in Divi 1 last year. We worked with these clubs and got them over the line and supported them. So yeah, just let us know if there's any examples of clubs turning up and the other club refusing to do it, because it's not on, and it won't get there if that happens. There's a quick slide. If you haven't seen live scoring and how it all works, we've got a fantastic training video. Demonstrates the process in about 4 minutes with real-time action. But as you can see there, each competitor has a phone, has the app on their phone, and they use that keyboard at the bottom to put the end-by-end score in. And at the end of the match, they just complete it, and the results go straight into BowlsLink and finalise your whole game. So if you haven't had a look at it and you want to know how it all works, that video, it's on our YouTube. It only goes for 4 minutes, and it's a great video that other states have been using. Just a bit of the future. As I mentioned, on the 1st of October, Bowls Australia released the app. There's a slide of it on the next one, Jeff. That's what it looks like, and it's been really well received by our members. And I would see people who have club admin will still need to probably go on to a desktop and onto the internet. People who are managing sides at the moment will probably still need to do that, but the rest of our members, they won't need to go onto the internet anymore. It's all in the app there. Results, entering comps, your certifications, all your details in the one app. Fantastic. It's what we needed with this system. And it was a great release on the 1st of October. So I highly recommend promoting that in your clubs. And if you've got members who are not quite sure about their account, they can always give us a call and we'll help them out. A couple other future ideas. There's talk about bringing in a player ranking system. I know we have the player ladder in our competitions, which everyone's loving, but the more comps we have in the system and also live scoring, the opportunity we have to actually have a ranking in Australia and in Victoria. So when you play someone, if the result will then determine your ranking. That's definitely a floated idea. I think the reporting dashboard does need to improve a little bit. So a bit of a build your own dashboard is being floated. And the last idea, which I think would be fantastic for our clubs that do a lot of barefoot bowls, is the ability for our barefoot bowlers to book online. So it might be a QR, pay for a rink, and then turn up to our clubs and play. We've got a lot of bowlers in that area who get a one-off experience, but to make that a lot easier for our clubs would be fantastic. So a scan, pay, and then play system would be what our sport needs. That's probably my two slides there, Jeff. So BowlsLink and selection. So if we've got any more questions on either of those topics, happy to open it up.
As I say, if there's any questions for Matt, whether now or that come to you afterwards, by all means, Matt's with us for the duration of the presentation. So anything that comes up, by all means, take the opportunity. He's a wealth of knowledge around BowlsLink and certainly one of the keenest advocates that we have. So, and uses the system himself, so he understands it inside out.
Just want to say, I just saw Jack Dell jump on. Jack's one of our developers, so I just want to shout out to all our regional developers. We don't create all the competitions. We've got someone in each of our regions who do that. So just a big shout out to I call them the key contacts in each of our regions. They do an amazing job. I think Mario is also online from Mornington Peninsula. So just a big shout out to those people.
Thanks, Matty. If any comes up, we'll defer back to you a bit later. An opportunity for myself to talk to the Women in Bowls project. For those of you, hopefully you will have come across this either on the Bowls Victoria website, either through survey invitations that went out last year or information that we've been putting up on the website of late. Effectively, the board determined that after 20 years and a decline in women's pennant participation of 45%, that we needed to take some fairly serious steps to arrest that trend. Whilst we have seen a decline in men's participation in the pennant area, it's only been at barely half that rate. What we have observed overall, though, is an increase in participation, and the national census shows us that whilst we have 30 to 40,000 registered members, the majority of whom are pennant bowlers, we have about 160,000 people who are participating in the game across the state on an annual basis. The board sought to invest in some research that would help support us. We needed to go beyond the stories that our sport could tell and the experiences that we had, and get some independent research that we could take out to government to get some more support. So through some board investment, we got some research undertaken by Deakin University, 70-page report that came up with 21 recommendations and 6 key actions. That information can be seen on the dedicated member space that I'll talk to a little bit later on the BV website. We took that information to the state government, and just a little bit of sort of the processes from within the office. As the state body, we get an opportunity every couple of years to apply to state government for funding around participation initiatives. We took the information that Deakin had provided us to Sport and Rec Victoria and received some grant funding to invest into developing a project called Bringing Women Back to Bowls. That went for approximately 2 years, and we're applying those strategies and actions that Deakin helped us to identify. They talked about things like the kinds of programs that our clubs are offering and the times that we offer those activities. There was a strong focus on auditing policies, and as dry as that area is, and the fact that both Pat and Matt have talked to it, I'll also touch on that a little bit around the selection policy. It's one of those really necessary areas that does tend to be at the heart of a lot of our disputes, but it also tends to be a lack of a selection policy that leads to challenges for all bowlers, but particularly the experience of women, where we sent out invitations to about 25,000 registered members to talk to us about their experience in bowls, and we received about 2,700 responses. Deakin were really happy with that. That's a really significant sample size for them to do their research. And one of the most common experiences of women bowlers was being dropped from a side to make room for a bloke who was coming back in, and to not be able to question or challenge that selection. Matt talks about a club having a published policy that tells the members on what attributes they'll be selected, whether it be on merit or whatever the case may be, and what your process is if someone disagrees with that selection, and having just a reasonable ability to question that and how that process occurs. Too often it comes through to us, and it's someone from the club's abused the chair of selectors or one of the other selectors. They haven't followed process properly, or they've caught them at the bar at the end of training on the Thursday night, having seen the selected sides and had a go at them. Typically what happens is the bowler tends to regret that, and the selector says, well, I'm volunteering my time, why am I getting this kind of treatment? So it's important that those kind of policies are in place, and that there are avenues for people to challenge the questions and decisions, but to do so appropriately. We have some advice. We also did some interviews with program deliverers and clubs that are running social programs, competitive programs, to look at how to guides that can help clubs to adopt those kinds of programs that are more popular. We've got some examples of those in that web area, and also for us to look at some partnerships that better align the bowls or the sport of bowls to be attractive to women and girls. We're in a situation at the moment where we have approximately 2-to-1 participation, male to female. We tick over 30% female members and have over 60% male members. And we'll be presenting on the Women in Bowls project tomorrow night in the Bowls Australia Club Map session. In that session, we'll talk about the fact that we took a snapshot of Metro pennant bowls, and apologies for using the Metro example. We took a snapshot of Metro pennant bowls one weekend and found that of the all of the back end positions, thirds and skips, 2% of them were filled by females. We're not too sure that if we're selecting on merit that that's going to be a reasonable ratio reflection of the talent of the female bowlers that we have. So we've done a little bit more work to take our campaign back to government. So having exhausted the 2 years on the Bringing Women Back to Bowls, we've now gone a little bit further. So the Lead to Leaders program, which has just come to not a conclusion. We've finally identified, with support of our regions, the 4 candidates in each region who will be either fully subsidised to undertake a coach accreditation, which will be led by our education and training manager. Matt will deliver that course directly, and another 2 candidates who will be engaged in some governance training. So we've partnered with our regions to identify suitable candidates for those out of expressions of interest that were sent out. We've also then talked to the regions about helping us to identify where those opportunities for coaching and for governance roles will come from. We're interested if it's a club subcommittee, if it's the club committee proper, a board at region level onto the BV board or beyond. We're interested in candidates who will undertake some training to go through that process. And then the final dot point on that slide, the fair access in country bowls. So we're doing this with all local governments in Victoria, but in particular, we've got to focus on the 40 regional and rural local governments. If you haven't come across fair access, in brief, it is a legislative requirement of all local councils in Victoria to implement a fair access policy and action plan to ensure equitable access to sport and rec facilities for women and girls. The simplest example I can talk to that would be your local football club that has for years had a senior reserves and thirds men's teams running around, and then started up a women's program. And the women's program was, not surprisingly, training on a Friday at 7 when the ground was available and playing on a Sunday morning for the same reason. The fair access requirements of the Victorian government are that sporting clubs provide those facilities and enable an equity of access so that women and girls get the opportunity to access them. Our challenge in bowls is a sport that has been open for 20 years and have men and women playing alongside one another, have facilities that accommodate men and women at the same time. As a general rule, we train together, we play together. So we're working with the local governments to understand what their expectations are and to co-host forums with them across the state to bring bowls clubs together with the council so we can understand what are they demanding of our clubs and how can we help to achieve those expectations. The reason that local council is such a significant stakeholder, as many of you would probably know from your own experience, up to 2/3 of our clubs are on council land. And so when councils are obligated to achieve outcomes through the state government, our clubs are also obligated to respond to those requirements as well. So that program's barely underway. We've got about 18 months or so with Mark Coleman as the country manager Southern and Josh Thornton, country manager Northern. We'll be looking to bring together our clubs and local governments in those, as I say, 40 forums. I'll open up that space, the Women in Bowls space, on our website at the end when we've got the Q&A underway, just to give people a first look at it, if you haven't already come across it. But we've got some good examples. St Kilda are represented, so it's great to see them here tonight. They're represented on the website. Just examples of programs and resources, case studies that clubs can borrow. We've had some very generous clubs who are documenting their experience and providing it to us, and we're sharing that information. There's a lot of good stuff out there. There's no secrets that we can't borrow from and improve our offerings across the board. That's the Women in Bowls project. I'm happy to take questions on that now or at the end. I'll move on. I'm happy to come back to it. The second topic for myself to talk to was one that the board quite some time ago gave the office a bit of direction to explore what Indigenous recognition might mean in bowls. We're certainly not breaking any new ground as a sport. We're following certainly a lot of major sports and even some of the smaller sports who have already undertaken this process. I confess to being a sport administrator, have been doing this kind of work for some time, and probably had the blinkers on a little bit in that I thought the answer to that was, well, we do a reconciliation action plan. For those of you who are familiar with them, it's a commitment from the sport to not only acknowledge but to understand how Indigenous people engage with our sport and make commitments to that. We convened an advisory group. We put out an expression of interest, convened an advisory group. We had a great response where we had several people with some really significant and relevant experience, including developing reconciliation action plans in either their own club or professionally. What we found was that wasn't necessarily the sole destination for bowls, that a wrap, as they're commonly referred, is not the only solution or the only way that the sport can acknowledge Indigenous participation. So from our perspective, we've talking to our advisory group, we've taken this on the road. So we've taken this out to our 11 country regions. We've done our 2 metro regions, and obviously now our online region, taking any comments, questions and feedback that we've been getting along the way. But at the end of the day, what kind of tripped me up a little bit was that the group said maybe the wrap isn't the only solution for bowls. What we need to understand is that we can just do good, and we need to look at how we do that. The board has already adopted a policy around an acknowledgement of country at our AGM and at a couple of our major events, and starting to understand what gestures we need to show that the sport is welcoming and inviting of all participants, and particularly Indigenous Australians who are not seen in great numbers in bowls, and we're advised we probably don't even realise many would be playing because they're not making themselves known. So we want to be a sport that welcomes all. We'll continue to grow if we do. Like women, like Indigenous bowlers, we shouldn't be excluding anyone at this stage. We want to see our participation growing. That's sorry about that. I've just managed to shrink everything on my screen, picking up my notes page. At this stage, I'd like to invite Mark Coleman, our country manager Southern, to talk to, I'll just skip through, disciplinary powers at club and region level. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Jeff. For those who I haven't met and are up north, my role is similar to JT up north. I look after the southern regions. So very similar role. Josh has been in a bit longer than me, so I'm nearly up to 12 months, so enjoying the role. So we've been working on the disciplinary powers for a little while now to change it, make it a bit user-friendly. So you can see the slide there. Current situation, clubs handle club matters. So anything in your own club, the clubs handle. Region, they handle pennant and state events only. What happens if it's between clubs or outside of that area? So it normally goes to Bowls Victoria straight away. So just puts an extra workload on Bowls Victoria, and it might not get handled straight away. So the proposed change is clubs still handle club matters. Will increase power to the regions to handle things outside a region and outside a club. But they will work closely with the country manager, north or south, who they will report any issues to and work with the regions just to form that stronger relationship, get the process handled a lot quicker. Next slide, Jeff. So how to work. Each region will identify people to form a disciplinary panel. So we know at all the clubs and all our regions, there's people with great skill sets which we could use. So we will identify a group, and this will be for each region. So each region will have their own group. And if a matter goes that far, we'll pick the right people to deal with that issue. and that'll go through the country manager. The benefits of the change: regions will have more power. It'll streamline the process, which just get it done quicker and not wait for ages for clubs or regions to deal with the issue. Get it over and done with as quick as we can, and it'll utilise resources and staffing better. So I'm hoping that all makes sense to everyone. It's still a working process. We hope to have it out very shortly now. It's been spoken to all regions and everyone has had their input about it. Yeah.
Mark, I think probably one of the great frustrations from especially from the regions is something comes up, it falls out of the scope of the region to deal with it. It comes through to BV, and unfortunately, it takes time to then follow up locally. It's not being done locally, and it's not being done promptly. And these changes we expect will help to improve that situation, give the regions the ability to deal with things that are happening in their areas a little more promptly, and certainly locally, which is where it should be happening. All right, Mark, do you want to pick up on the junior squads?
I can, yes. So anyone who knows me, they know juniors are very passionate with myself. So currently the 16 regions, we have 6 without junior squads. So what we'd love to see is every region in Victoria have a junior squad. So you'll get support from Bowls Victoria. We'll set up programs, pathways, skill development, and then the major one is retention of these under 18s or even under 25s. So junior squads don't have to be under 18s. So you currently see some stats there, the ones without the region, without the junior squads. So there is great numbers in those regions. So if you're in those regions, please reach out to Bowls Victoria for any help to encourage or get someone you know or the right person to run those junior squads. There's a number of kids at Tassie at the moment. They're all great mates. They work well together. Getting the kids together at Doug Kneebone or the Provincial, it's a great atmosphere and great thing for the kids to learn. And if they get good enough, they just are able to play with the adults on an even playing field. So it's a great opportunity to get your junior squad up and running. There's a big future for kids in bowls.
Probably something that many might not be aware of. We actually already have some formal relationships with a number of school associations, and the peak body in Victoria, School Sport Victoria, we're quite engaged with them and are already convening their junior, so their primary school competition. Those of you who are following, in the last couple of weeks, we had the state final at Sunbury 2 weeks ago. We're in discussion. We support their delivery of the finals in the secondary school as well. So bowls is being played in schools and it's being played at both primary and secondary level. We think it's a great opportunity for us to continue to introduce the sport to a new population. And we know for a fact that someone is more likely to take up a sport where they've had an experience of it, especially as a child. So the more kids that we can get bowls into their hands, the more likely we might not be immediately, but we will get a return on that with people coming back to the sport sooner or later. Thanks, Mark. If anyone's interested, certainly if you're in the southern regions and you would like to follow that one up, by all means, speak to Mark. As he said, he's very passionate about it, and his compatriot Josh Thornton's just as passionate in the north as well. One final topic that we want to touch on this evening, and then, as I say, we'll open up to any other questions that you have, is volunteering. It's a bit of an interesting one. We do want to acknowledge the volunteers that we have who have joined us today. No doubt most of you are here because you're at a club, you're a club delegate, you're representing your club. I'm sure some of you just are very interested to hear what Bowls Victoria have said and have come online, but no doubt you're here representing your club first and foremost. As I said earlier, we've got our volunteer president, Pat, who's joined us for this evening. She's been on the road with us at every one of our tour events and has given up her time to do that. And for those, we also had our deputy president, Gus McIsaac, from Yarraville Footscray, who joined us on the road for every one of those trips as well. For us, for the sport, we're still a community-based sport. The majority of our participation happens in community-based clubs, similar to the clubs that are operating on council land. More than 2/3 of our clubs are incorporated associations who are operating only because of the work that volunteers do. And from our perspective, we not only appreciate the work that's done in clubs, but we acknowledge that our ability to deliver the events we're responsible for couldn't happen without volunteers. And the most obvious example of that would be the second largest bowls event in the country is the Victorian Open. You can see a good shot of a volunteer from the Vic Open there. We had 18 clubs who co-hosted the event with us last year or earlier this year. Of those 18 clubs, we wouldn't have been able to deliver the event we delivered without the volunteers that are at all of those clubs. So we know the value of volunteers and how important they are to the successful delivery of the sport. We also know that volunteering has gotten harder. Just in the last short time, there's been such an increase in the demands on volunteers. Not only the work that needs to be done, but the complexity of the work and the knowledge that is assumed that you have. An example that I can give, and I'll just refer to my notes just to do that, is that our peak body Vic Sport talks about compliance burdens being one of the single biggest issues for volunteers, and that the recruitment of volunteers is continuing to be the single biggest issue for clubs. So trying to recruit volunteers is difficult, and then the compliance burdens that are put on them just makes that job the harder. We started not long into the 2000s, we had the introduction of the Working with Children checks. In 2012, we had the Incorporated Associations Reform Act, which was a change to the Incorporated Associations. In 2022, we had the introduction of the National Integrity Framework, which certainly introduced some layers to the attention of complaints and disciplining of members within clubs. In 2022, we also had amendments to the Incorporated Association regulations. In 2023, we finally had the Child Safe Standards. And in Victoria, we felt the need to complicate it with an additional standard not required across the rest of the country. You also have in all clubs your food handling requirements, your responsible service of alcohol, and your bar license requirements. No doubt you've got dealings with insurance brokers and insurance companies, and of course your councils for most of our clubs, and other authorities for those who aren't the incorporated associations on council land. And of course BV occasionally will reach out with something that we might require. This kind of demands, and this compliance requirements that have just grown over the last 2 decades. It doesn't just require a volunteer who's got some time. It requires a volunteer who's got some time and a fair amount of understanding of what is required of them. And we see that that's becoming a complex role. And it's why we have positions like Mark and Josh who are embedded in the regions that they work, who are there to be able to support regions and clubs with some of these more complex matters. What we do find is in terms of managing volunteers, the basics haven't changed. If you can find a good volunteer and recruit them for a specific role, then do that. Dedicate them to that one role, the one role that they're good at. If you've got a good volunteer doing that work, be prepared to recognise them. So publicly recognise the work that they're doing, and at the end of it, reward them, whether that's at the end of your season or at the end of their task. Be prepared to reward them. So those three principles around recruit, recognise and reward, they remain really fundamental to the success of managing your volunteers. And one of the learnings that we had along the way that actually came from Matt Atobre and his club was, if you're looking for a volunteer, maybe the first role you need to fill is someone who is your coordinator of volunteers, someone who's got a handle on what are the tasks that need to be done and what are the skills that our members have. We've all come from some background along the way. And as Matt said, he was a teacher by trade. At his club, he was actually doing the club newsletter. And it was pointed out to him that for all his efforts, it was pointed out to him that one of their members was actually the editor of a newspaper. and he might be a suitable volunteer to do their newsletter. So they tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, would you be interested in helping out with the newsletter? And the member was more than pleased to be asked, and even happier to do the task. So he was just waiting to be asked. He was there. He had a skill set. And it lent itself to that role. They didn't ask him to do everything else. He's not cooking the barbecue on a Saturday morning or anything, or rolling the greens or doing any of that sort of stuff. They've worked with what his skill set is, and they've put him to the most effective use. Some of the other things that we want to talk to, there is a focus on volunteering, and there's a focus on it at all levels of government. Local councils have volunteer recognition programs. The state government does as well. And even more recently, I was at a forum with the Sports Commission, were in attendance, and they were acknowledging that the demands on volunteering has gotten to a point where we certainly are expecting much, much more, and quite reasonably should be directing our club volunteers to talk to, whether it's the Marks and the Joshes that are embedded in their region or coming through to the Bowls Victoria office. That's absolutely what we want to see. It's important that we share the load. Probably the most common story, and I dare say the story of the people in this forum, is you put your hand up to do a task, you make the mistake of doing it quite well, and you find yourself getting another task and another task. And as they refer to in mission creep, all of a sudden what started out as a job on the weekend is now a job for life, and you're invaluable at the club and you can't go any further. I'm getting some nods. I know that that's the feeling that you have. We don't want anyone to burn out. We value the volunteers. We want you to share the load. Don't be frightened to ask. As Matt was pleasantly surprised, there was someone actually who was there to take at least one of those tasks off him. And from his experience, look at what the skill sets of your members are. There might be people out there. Don't be frightened to say no, and do be concerned. If you say yes and you say yes, you'll get the next task and the next task. There's a reason why they ask a busy person to do a job. It's because they do the work. So find some help. We've got some information again, like we do with the Women in Bowls project. We've got some information on the website around volunteering, but I strongly encourage you to look at those steps. The reason that you're here is you're that person at your club. You're the one that says yes, and you're the one that takes on the job. And the very worst thing that could happen was when you're finally burned out and you've had enough, you leave and the club doesn't realise all the things that you were doing, and they've got to find 3 people to replace you. So please be mindful. We appreciate your work, we value your work, and we welcome you tonight, but certainly don't be frightened to look for help and to share the load. If we've got some information, we'll share it gladly. Be absolutely prepared to call us, ask us, see what we can help with, and then if we haven't got the answers, we'll help find them. That's everything that we wanted to bring forward in terms of our agenda tonight to share and to get your comments and questions on. We'll open up to a session of Q&A if you want to put it into the chat or put your hand up. But by all means, if you've got any unanswered questions, don't hesitate to ask them now. And while you do that, I'll open up the Women in Bowls space on our website. And I'll just get a thumbs up if you can see that screen change to Women in Bowls. Yep, thank you very much. So just very briefly, so this talks just in brief to the information. As I said, there was a 70-page document. We're not going to expect everyone to read through the 70 pages. St Kilda, a little nod to Tommy and Kay there. There's the case study from St Kilda that they shared with us. A little snapshot here, and then a further exploration of the case study there. And it's a good example of engagement with former and current players and bringing people back to the club, showing your appreciation for them and keeping them connected in their network. No questions have come up in the chat. If there's nothing at all, we're happy to call it an evening. Tony and Pat, if there's any last words from our President and CEO.
Jeff, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for being on this call tonight. It is great to see people from all over, and I'd also like to thank the team that have been taking this trip around to all of our clubs. As I said, we've got 499 clubs and everyone's been invited to be a part of this. So thanks to those people that came tonight.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Pat. Thank you all. I'll stop the screen share there. And if there's nothing else, we'll say good night. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.